Jeffrey has dangerously low testosterone, but he doesn't even know it. He wonders why he's never motivated, why he feels lethargic when he tries to exercise, and why he doesn't even get morning wood anymore. Why do I have no energy? He complains. Adonis. Adonis has the highest testosterone possible, but this isn't from genetics. Adonis has spent years practicing good habits to optimize his levels. He was once extremely low in testosterone, but then he noticed the signs and made a change. Adonis understands exactly what Jeffrey is suffering from, and he knows just who can help. The CEO of testosterone. He tells Jeffrey about the 5 important signs of low testosterone, and Jeffrey suddenly realizes that he has all 5. Jeffrey's great to have friends like Adonis and Jack and knows exactly what to do next. Just over a year ago, I got my testosterone checked twice. Both times in the morning, fasted. I followed all the protocols that you should do before the test. And both times, my scores came back around 440 nanograms per deciliter for the total test. And the free test was somewhere around the expected equivalent of that. So 440 nanograms per deciliter for a fit, young, healthy young man. And you know that the range is between 270 to about 900. So I was pushing near the bottom of this range, and I had comparable results to 70 to 80 year-olds. Now, one thing that I did have was the psychological drive to go out there and to challenge myself and to do the hard work, especially when I didn't feel like it. And so even though I had seemingly low testosterone, my body still looked good. In 2021, I was still quite jacked, I was lean, I looked good, I performed pretty well. And at the time, that's pretty much all I cared about. But I had some symptoms of low testosterone that I didn't really know were possibly from testosterone. And the first one was that I felt quite anxious and I was overthinking. And this is something my friend Jack, the CEO of Testosterone, even says, and I'll quote him here. I was really anxious, really shy, really nervous, and I'd never been like that before. So I started looking into it and I had low testosterone. And I don't know the science around this, why low testosterone could cause anxiety in like a science neurological way. Maybe Andrew Huberman's explained it before. But in a practical setting, it makes sense to me that if a man's testosterone is reduced, testosterone's kind of like that drive hormone that causes him to pursue higher status. If that goes down, he can start to feel quite anxious, especially around other people, because he feels that he's lower down in society. There was a blog post that I read a while ago, and it was a bunch of like, pseudoscience things. The blog was called Wujo, and he was talking about anxiety and depression, and he explained them to in an evolutionary psychological way, where he said that men of low status will have anxiety and depression because they fear that the alpha male will kick them out of the tribe. Think about it, if you're really low down in the social status amongst your peers, you could feel quite bad mentally because you have this fear that you could be, for example, replaced, you could be banished from the tribe. And of course, we're not really in tribes anymore, we've developed a lot, but at least to me, it made sense that why it seems like the majority of guys who are quite low status feel anxious and depressed. And it could be explained with just low testosterone, but okay, but why would low testosterone cause anxiety and depression? What is the purpose? The sciencey stuff makes sense and it gives this whole argument credibility, but what is the purpose of having anxiety and negative thoughts if you have low testosterone? Well, it's probably because you fear getting banished by the guy up there, and so it makes you neurotically think about ways that you can provide for your tribe. Of course, none of that is like proven scientifically. It just kind of made sense to me from some random blog that I read, and I was like, oh yeah, that does make sense. So if you ever do find yourself quite anxiously thinking, especially about a social circle, probably because you're not that high up in that social circle. Because if you were really, really high up in some kind of social circle in your school or workplace, you probably wouldn't be anxious about it. The second sign that you might have low testosterone is having a low amount of muscle mass and a higher amount of body fat, especially in the more womanly areas. So of course, low muscle and higher fat is just due to your training and your diet. But certainly, let's say if you've been doing the right things, if you've been going to the gym and you've been training kind of hard, not perfect, of course not, but you've been putting in some work, and then you come home and you've been eating higher protein and you've been researching, you've been watching the videos on fitness and everything. And so you've been putting in some work and you don't see any like major results for a while. Like for example, there's guys out there that have been going to the gym at least 3 times a week, actually like training pretty hard. Like you'll see them in the gym, they're grunting as they hit the weights. They're kind of doing progressive overload, and of course they're not perfect, but they still look skinny fat 2 years in. And this of course comes down to multiple reasons, not just low testosterone. One of the big reasons why someone might go to the gym for 2 years and look relatively the same is that they haven't bulked their body weight enough. The first year that you want to gain muscle, you're going to the gym consistently. You can build, like bodybuilders say, on average, like roughly 10 pounds of muscle mass. And of course that's very different. Some guys could be able to build like 15 pounds, 20 pounds. Some guys maybe only like 5, but to build that muscle, it needs to come from somewhere. It needs to come from like an anabolic state inside of your body, and the biggest, most consistent anabolic state that you can have is just a calorie surplus. That means that if you're watching this right now and you're thinking, yeah, I probably have low testosterone because my body doesn't look that different and I've been going to the gym for 6 months. What I'd ask you is, how much do you weigh right now compared to how much you did weigh when you first started? If, for example, you're saying that you've been training pretty hard, you know, you're dieting like pretty good, and you step on the scale and it isn't really that different from what you started with. Let's say you started 6 months ago at 160 pounds on the scale, and right now you're 159. You're probably not going to look that much difference because you're pretty much the same weight. And then there's the guys who don't even weigh themselves at all, so they don't even have this metric like that. That could be you. You could be watching this thinking, yeah, I've not even gotten any bigger, but like you don't even know how much you weigh to begin with. You need some data to track. What I'd like to see before you self-diagnose yourself with low testosterone is that you step on the scale and you actually see a number that's like at least 20 pounds higher than what you used to be after your first year of training. So if you stepped on the scale on the first day of your training and you were 160 pounds, then at the end of 12 months, if you stepped on the scale and you were 180, I'd say that's a fairly like pretty much perfect bulk. It's not like ultra lean, and of course you will gain some fat, but it's like you should be okay with that in your first year of training. It's like just pack on the muscle. You've got noob gains, just eat a lot and just go to the gym, man. You'll make a lot of progress. But a lot of guys don't do that. So if that's the first protocol. If you're not making muscle in the first year, let's first focus on bulking, progressive overload, sleep, all those important things. But then let's say if you've genuinely been doing that, you've genuinely been sleeping okay, you've genuinely been training kind of hard, and you can literally see data on the scale that shows that you have gained weight, significant weight in the last 6 to 12 months, and you still look bad, you still don't look like you have that much muscle, you still literally can't see any new muscle on your arms, then there's something else up, isn't there? And so low testosterone can cause very little muscle and strength gains. And when it comes to taking steroids, a lot of people in the bodybuilder community always say something. They say like, steroids isn't a cheat code, you still have to work really, really hard if you take steroids. Past a certain level, sure, but to begin with, not really. There's at least one research that I remember that showed that if someone took steroids and didn't weight train at all, they literally just took steroids and just, you know, sat around, they built, I believe, 6 pounds of lean muscle mass in like the 1 month trial or the 2 month trial that the study was going on. If they took steroids and then trained on top of that, it was more like 10 pounds of lean muscle mass that they built in like 2 months, which is what a normal person would probably build in his first year of training, never mind the years after that where the muscle gain is slower. And then they also compared this with someone who was natural going to the gym, and that guy made like I think 1 pound of muscle in the first 2 months. This is like it's a study that I remember seeing literally years ago, so I've probably got like the numbers wrong and everything. But from my perspective, that literally meant like steroids are kind of a cheat code, especially in the earlier years of your training. And of course, once you get to like bodybuilder level and you know some big guys taking them, it's like, yeah, that guy still have to go to the gym for like 10 hours a week or something. But those are two extremes, right? One is like the guy who sees no progress in like a year and he's probably got low testosterone. Then the other guy is like, you know, the guy who blasts some gear and then he's made 10 pounds of muscle in like a month, right? Those are two extremes. But what if we consider the naturally higher testosterone, better genetics in terms of muscle mass kind of guys? This is where it gets really interesting and really blackpilling. Once I tell you this, you'll never be able to look at men the same way, right? This only accounts for guys who don't really go to the gym that much, right? If there's a guy who probably goes to the gym 6 times a week, resistance training, it's like we can't look at him for what I'm about to say. But specifically for the guys that you know that don't really go to the gym that much, have a look at their builds. Literally just physically look at the size of them and you will see such a drastic difference, which is down to pretty much 2 things. It's just genetics and testosterone. You will see such a huge difference, bro. There are people out there that have a 6-pack and pecs literally just naturally without even going to the gym. This is such like a blackpilling moment. My best friend in university, Levi, he's from Kenya, and he wasn't like big, you know. I remember he stepped on my scale once. He was 140 pounds and he was 5'8", something like that, quite kind of short, right? And I was 6'1" and I was like 160. And his physique, his body composition looked better than mine. Now, of course, he was shorter and he had very different genetics and probably testosterone and everything. But then I remember we started going to the gym together. By the time I got into university and I was good friends with this guy, I had been like 3 years of like, yeah, eat, sleep, lift, repeat, you know, like that was the main thing in my mind. And yeah, of course I did so many things wrong. My sleep wasn't great. I was drinking quite a lot, but like so was he. And you know, my training was okay, whatever. Just, I wasn't perfect at all, right? But 3 years of like dedication and everything, right? I swear, this guy went to the gym for around 2 to 3 months and looked better than me, significantly better than me. And his weights that he was using in the gym weren't that far. So I remember we did this like had this high rep competition with bench press, 20 kg plate either side. We only had a Smith machine in our gym, which isn't ideal. We just put a 20 kg plate. We just saw how many reps we could bust out on this Smith machine. And I remember I got like pretty much double his, but I had been training for so much longer. And when we took our shirts off, he literally began to look way better and more muscular than me. And then also there was another friend of ours who was a flatmate of mine. And he was one of those naturally, like, he didn't go to the gym or anything. He didn't have an amazing body composition, but he was naturally just kind of like a bigger build guy. He was like 6'1", 6'2", a little bit taller than me, I think, so about 6'2", and maybe like 170 pounds, 180 pounds. Not lean, not fat, you know, 15% body fat, like to drink beer and stuff. And sometimes he'd come into the gym because he knew I'd be in there, and he'd just talk to me about something like, oh, you know, lad, oh, this happened today, and oh, are you coming out later? He'd just around whilst I was in the gym, we'd talk. You know, he'd been to the gym like 20 times before in his life. He'd grab the 20 kg dumbbells, and his form wasn't perfect, but he'd hit it well. Sometimes I'd be on the Smith machine, like, you know, benching with 20 kg plate and then a 10 kg plate, going for like 8 reps or something, and I'd stand up and he'll literally just sit on it, no warm up, no stretch, no nothing, bust out like 5 pretty good reps. Bro, I swear to God, these guys weren't taking gear. They weren't secretly training or dieting or anything. I lived with the guy. I knew him like really well. It's just the genetic difference, and I think testosterone also plays a role in this. Some guys, you can literally just look and like smell the testosterone coming from him. You can literally just look at some guys and think, me, like, that's a Neanderthal over there, bro. He's got 4-digit testosterone. And then there's you, and you got like fat titties, gynecomastia. I'm looking at myself in the camera, but I'm talking about myself, man. I got gyno. And so this is what I meant about the second part of this section, that a sign of low testosterone is not just about muscle mass, but it's also about fat gain, like higher fat gain, but also, very unfortunately, that if you've got low testosterone, you seem to develop